Hello and welcome back to the channel. Almost 4 years ago now, I made the switch over to the mirrorless camera system with the Fuji X-T2. Prior to that, for several years I was shooting on a Nikon D700 SLR camera. Now, I've been feeling a bit nostalgic lately, so I wanted to go back in time and remember what it was like to shoot with an SLR. And thanks to my good mate Antonio, that's exactly what I'll be doing. Antonio, being a man of culture, has the exact same setup that I used to have. Nikon D700 with a battery grip and the 24-70 2.8. Compare this with the equivalent setup on my X-T2 and straight away you can see the size difference. Plus, the Fuji comes in at 1.2 kilos versus the Nikon's 2.5 kilos. This highlights one of the major advantages of a mirrorless camera over an SLR. It also highlights the fact that I really need to go to a gym. 1001, 1002. Because this feels heavy even after just a couple of minutes of use. Now, before we go any further, you may be wondering what's the difference between an SLR camera and a mirrorless camera. So let me give you a quick 20-second, extremely unscientific rundown on the differences between the two. So when the light comes through the lens on an SLR camera, it hits a mirror, which then directs the light up to a pentaprism, which is basically just a bunch of other mirrors, and then onto your eyeballs. When you press the shutter release button to take a photo, the mirror just lifts up out of the way, and now the light has an uninterrupted path through to the shutter and then the sensor. So once you press on this guy, the light can just go straight through, the mirror lifts up out of the way, the shutter opens and then the light goes onto the sensor, and that's what takes your photo. With a mirrorless camera, as the name may suggest, there is no mirror in the way. So that means that the light is just always going straight onto the shutter and the sensor. There's nothing interrupting its path. In practical terms, what that means is when I look through the viewfinder on my X-T2, I'm seeing exactly what the sensor is going to see. So when I change my settings, whether it's my aperture, my ISO, my shutter speed, I get to see straight away how that's going to look. It means that I can dial in my shots straight away, and it really takes out a lot of guesswork. With the Nikon, you're seeing the real world. So when you look through the viewfinder, which is a nice big viewfinder here, you're seeing exactly what is in the real world. Because the light is hitting a mirror and then coming up to your eye, you're not seeing what the sensor sees. What this means is you now need to use your light meter to figure out whether it's going to be overexposed or underexposed, or basically just take a couple of test shots, have a look and see how the photos are coming out. If they're coming out too dark, make the changes to make them lighter, vice versa. Rinse and repeat until you then get the result that you're after. Because there are less moving parts inside a mirrorless camera, it means it can come in much smaller and lighter than an SLR. Now, this was actually one of the driving factors behind me moving to the X-T2 when I did almost 4 years ago, because I'm that guy that brings his camera everywhere he goes, and I was just getting over having such a bulky item that I had to carry around with me all the time. And another reason that I made the switch was because I wanted to start shooting video. Unfortunately, D700, it's great at taking photos, but it can't do video. At the time, Nikon's camera bodies that had the specs and the features that I wanted to be able to do video and the like, they were just too expensive and I simply couldn't afford to buy one. And to be fair, I still can't afford one of those bodies now. So for me, it was a matter of deciding to jump ship, go over to Fuji, go into the mirrorless world and embrace everything that it offered me. If it sounds like I'm heaping praise on the mirrorless system and heaping poo on the SLR system, let me take a look on the other side of the fence for a bit and show the advantages of an SLR. Firstly, this guy could honestly knock down my house or quite easily just kill someone with little to no effort. The X-T2 is built nice and solidly, it's well built, but this is just in a league of its own. I mean, this thing is tough. It will cop abuse all day long and not even bat an eyelid. This thing is a workhorse. And of course, the shutter sound. I think it speaks for itself, but let's see if I can just turn it on and see if you can hear this. That's pretty bloody tasty. Another advantage with the SLR is the battery life is much, much better than the mirrorless counterpart. Now, because of the way a mirrorless camera operates, it's constantly providing power to the electronic viewfinder or the back screen, depending on what you're using. whereas an SLR is really just ticking over, keeping the light meter up to date until of course you take a photo. There was many times where I'd go out and shoot all day with my D700, take upwards of 1,000 photos and come home with 50% battery, or sometimes a little bit under, but around 50%. Whereas with the XT2, if I go and do a cars and coffee event that goes for a couple of hours, I've at least killed one battery. And if I decide to do some filming, potentially two. Enough talking about these two cameras, it's time to go and shoot and remember what it's like to use the Nikon D700. I decided to jump in the car and head out to a spot that I've used plenty of times to shoot my car and also my mates' cars and bikes. Of course, the weather decided to be cold and foggy, but it was still a great reminder of what it was like to use an SLR, even if I did crack the shits with the cold and head home after 10 or so minutes. I had a lot of fun using an SLR again, and it actually really highlighted how much I've changed my workflow and my style since moving to a mirrorless camera. Once again, I want to give a big thank you to Antonio for lending me his camera to make this video. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and let me know down in the comment section below, are you someone who still uses an SLR? Or are you perhaps on the fence of whether you go an SLR or a mirrorless or what, or you're just looking to transition between the two? As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.